Hey everyone, we're happy to be back to bring you King's Talk, presented by Cap City Crown. As always, this is Tony, accompanied by John. Um, man, what a what a fun time to come back to do this podcast. Kings have won two preseason games, both by 30 or more points. Keegan Murray's looking like a stud. You know, the whole team. I know it's just preseason, but I mean, man, that team looks good. They look fluid. The ball movement looks good. Um, it's just with the season about a week away, it's just I'm getting really excited for what's to come. John, how are you feeling about all of this?
Well, just a few introductory notes. It's just it's both a surprising thing and not so surprising thing to see the Kings playing really competitive basketball. And I know it's just preseason, but you can tell the guys are bought in. You can tell that there's a system in place that has a chance to succeed. They definitely have the talent to succeed. And you know, we kind of knew this. It's a huge stark contrast from what you're used to seeing from the Kings. I mean, there's usually hope. There's been a lot of hope at the beginning of seasons. But, this one seemed really backed up, and this is what makes it not so surprising, was the way things closed last year. After they got Sabonis, oh man, right then it was just like a flip of a switch, and other components started coming together. Fox was playing better. You had contributions from a guy like Trey Lyles, who's going to be a contributor this season. You had Davion Mitchell step up, things like that. And so it's both kind of amazing and also kind of like, yeah, this is exactly what I expected. But I feel like it's a little bit more of the surprising thing because it's a little better. I know it's really early, but they things just seem ahead of schedule. Everything that they did in the off season leading up to training camp, whether it was getting together and playing pickup games in the facility in the months leading up, or I think Mark Jones was talking about it. It was the first I had heard of it. I think like Sabonis inviting guys to his house basically for like a little mini training camp. Or even on a smaller note, speaking of Sabonis, guys going to Eurobasket and getting into game shape. Um, all these things have put in. Another thing I should add is Mike Brown's. He had each player have the meeting with the player development coach so that everybody was clear about their role. I mean, all these things it was such a thoughtful and meticulous process leading up to this that, I mean, it's paying off because, the the Trailblazers on Sunday night, they look like a team that was playing, their second or so preseason game. A couple guys were hurt, couldn't play, but guys didn't look great. And they looked like they were figuring a lot of things out, Lillard included. And the Kings, they look ready to go almost. I mean, they're figuring things out in terms of the lineup and whatnot, but it's just incredible because everything's just flowing and grooving, like you're saying, on both ends of the floor. Obviously, there are things to work on, but at this point in the preseason, it seems like there's reason to be excited. Everything's being substantiated here. And, there's a lot to get into. And so we're going to just need to get into this piece by piece. And I think one of the big kind of storylines right now is the starting four position because it's kind of like a movie that was written that's really cliche. And you're sitting there, just kind of playing along with it. Like, we know Murray's the best player of the essentially three guys that could start at the four. KZ Okpala and Trey Lyles. Talk about them in a second. But it's like a predictable movie. You kind of have, especially with the whole aspect of the rookie who's not going to be handed anything. And I don't know. It just seems like I know how this one's going to end. And Murray is, to start with him, I mean, he's playing like one of the best players on this team. And again, it's early, but everything from summer league to here, he's just looked like an NBA player. And of course, maybe something happens when the lights come on in regulation or in the regular season. But I don't know. he just looks so solid. He's just plugs right in. He'll do what he needs to do. When he got plugged in early into the first quarter against the Trailblazers, because Akpala wasn't, I think he had an early foul, and he wasn't playing great in the first half, really at all. And Murray came in, and I think Murray missed his one shot that he took. And he wasn't like filling up the stat sheet anywhere, but you could tell the team was playing better. He went in there, he was plugged right into the situation with the starters, and he did not try to do too much. He plugged right in. He just helped them. And I think he ended up in that quarter, while Akpala had a minus something, or maybe maybe just a marginal +1 or something. Keegan Murray had a +11 from just like his presence being out there. The Kings were obviously playing better. And then you take into account when you do need him, you have him coming off of screens or whatever, or the split cut action or whatever, getting him open. He has so many ways to score the ball, and it just seems like that 3-pointer is just, he's right up there. Was one of the best 3-point shooters on this team, it seems. And there's so many things he can do, whether he needs to be a factor or not, a big factor or not. I mean, it just seems like whatever you need him to do, he's going to do it. And he's confident and he's poised. And I don't know. I feel like I could talk about Keegan Murray all day. And I feel like you could do the same. So, how good has Keegan Murray been?
I mean, Keegan Murray's been fantastic. It's from summer league through 2 preseason games. I mean, you can argue in the 2 preseason games that he was the best player on the floor each night. I mean, 5 for 6 from 3 on Sunday. And I mean, what was he, like 4 for 6 or 4 for 5 on the Monday before? I don't remember exactly. I feel like that was a little long ago. But man, just that 3-point shooting alone, he's shown defense. He's shown he can rebound, even get some block shots, some steals. He's just so much better than I imagined. I mean, I was hoping he'd be good, and at one point in his career, but he's just showing it right off the bat. It's so quick. Summer League MVP, and now just showing up to preseason against actual NBA talent instead of Summer League, whatever you want to call those. I mean, I guess some of them are NBA talent, but a lot of people are fighting for spots in the league. So it is nice seeing him do it against, Jeremy Grants and Damian Lillard's out on the floor. But it'll be interesting to see if he can replicate all this in the regular season. Of course, that's when it matters. But I mean, nothing bad to say about Keegan. But talking about that starting 4 position, I mean, I think KZ Okpala has been starting at the 4, and you got Trey Lyles and Metu and Murray. There's kind of like your 4 fours right there. I mean, you start off with Murray, but I mean, I'm going to start off with Okpala and Metu. If this team wants to be a legit team, a legit playoff pushing team, then Okpala and Metu should not see this floor very often this year. If they are, then I think that's an issue unless they've shown a vast improvement. They're just not that good. They're not like top of the rotation guys. Definitely not starters. I mean, Metu started like 10 something games last year. That tells you a lot, and I think they're far past that. You got a guy like Trey Lyles, who is a good player. I would not want him starting on this team. I think he's a great piece off the bench. But you have Murray, you have this guy who just seems to like fit in so well with this team and what's needed, especially adding that 3-point shot around Sabonis and Fox. He has to be your starter. If you want to be a legit team, he will start. I get it. Brown probably wants to, I don't know, make him earn his minutes. And it is kind of interesting seeing Okpala start just because he's probably going to be the 14th or 15th man inactive each night. I don't know. Mike Brown and him are kind of close from, their national or their Nigerian national team days. But I mean, I think it was always Murray's job to lose. And after his last two preseason performances, it's his.
Yeah, I think to stick with Murray for a second, it's just like you said, it's the the idea of making him earn it. I've noticed that some fans almost think it's a little ridiculous, but it's like whatever. It can't hurt. It seems like Murray thrives on that kind of mentality. I think you're right. He's proving that he's one of the best players on this team, and to maximize that, it's important for him to start. And there are also reasons, though, just to keep in mind that it shouldn't be crazy about an idea of Trey Lyles starting and it actually being beneficial to the team. And let me explain why. I'm not necessarily saying this is how it's going to go or this is how it should go, but there's an argument to it. First of all, Keegan Murray in the second unit, that's a lethal second unit. And Keegan Murray would still probably close games. He would be a focal point in the fourth quarter. He'd be in there, almost every night. Did we talk about Davion Mitchell being in the closing lineup? He would be in the closing lineup often, but Murray would be in the closing lineup regardless if they're up, down, close, whatever. I just feel like he does everything. He plugs into whatever position you need him to play, whether it's more out on the wing or more as a 4. He's got it going, and we talked about all the things he can do offensively. And we saw that with that second unit in the first preseason game, and I get it's just one preseason game, but in Los Angeles, that would be killer. But more importantly, think about Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles came to this team last season, and he became an instant factor when he was a starter. And I don't know that he closed a lot of games, and I feel like he didn't play like a ton of minutes. But he was a starter. He was a steady presence, and he was productive, very good on the glass, kind of as always, but as a shooter too. And one of the things that's really important to note about Trey Lyles is that I think he's played a little over 120 games as a starter in his career, and he's played somewhere around 350 games it's 126 games as a starter, 323 games as a reserve. As a starter, his field goal percentage is 45.9%, 3-point is 38.6%, free throw percentage is 76.7%. Those all drop when he's in a reserve role, and he's in a reserve role more often. 43% from the field, 31.8 from 3, 72.7 from the free throw line. Obviously, his rebound numbers are the same. They're a little higher as a starter because you're getting a little bit more minutes, but it's 6 total rebounds a game as a starter as opposed to 3.7 as a reserve. Again, that is kind of in relation to the minutes, but there's a drop off in numbers there. Trey Lyles is historically a better player when he's a starter, and we saw that last season. And in the game against Portland, who started the second half? Because Akpala was really bad. You're right. We'll get to him, and I'll get to him in a second. But Trey Lyles started the second half, and Trey Lyles was not good in the first half, and he was not really a factor at all in Los Angeles, again, in that reserve role. And he comes out starting with the starters, and he was pretty good. He hit 2 threes. He was solid. He was active on the glass, as he's always going to be. He's really one of the best offensive rebounders on this team. I know that the 2 offensive rebounds he got on Sunday night were on the same play, tip in, miss, tip in. But it's very clear that it seems like he seems settled in. He might be more comfortable with the starters. I'm willing to admit that maybe he just needs to get comfortable with the second unit more, and he could easily be doing the same stuff. That could easily be the case. But right now, it seems like he's almost better suited for the starting lineup, or at least there's an argument there is what I'm saying. And it's just throwing it out there. I still think, in my opinion, I still think Keegan Murray's got to start. I do kind of think that Lyles, if he sucks as a reserve, it's not going to be forever. He'll figure it out. It took him a second to find a place on this team, just kind of getting thrown into it. I'm sure he can figure it out, finding another way. He's a veteran. He's a smart player. And he's another one that doesn't try to do too much or anything like that. So he's going to just fill in. And but can't rule it out. And it'd be interesting to see who starts on Wednesday against the Suns. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Lyles is starting that game. Because it kind of plays into that Murray has to earn it. But I mean, I would throw that out there about Lyles. I don't know if you want to add anything on Lyles before I go on to some of these other guys.
No, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, Lyles plays better as a starter. There's proof of that. To me, it's just not enough of a factor to start him over Murray. I think Lyles would be fine off the bench still. And yeah, like Murray leading that second unit would be awesome. And that second unit would be crazy if Murray was on it with Mitchell, Monk, Murray, and Holmes. That's like the Kings starting lineup last year almost. When it seems like one of their better lineups in recent years. Obviously because they've been so bad. But if you want to maximize Murray's potential and you want to even maximize the bonuses and Fox's potential, I think having Murray out there with them as much as they can, and of course, he'll be in the closing lineups if anything if he doesn't start. But I think if you start off with those three right there, I think it just maximizes all three of their potential. They have that guy they can kick it to in the corner, so he can get those shots off, and he has a couple of good passers around him who can get him the ball. So that's why I think Murray starts, though. I can see your point with Lyles and Murray off the bench, but I don't think it's as important as Murray starting and how good of a starting lineup it can be this year, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. I just do think I think Murray will be the starter probably all year. Barring a setback or anything like that. But I do still think that you'll probably see Lyles start in Phoenix, or at least I wouldn't be surprised. Because that seems like that would fit right in with the thing he's doing. I mean, also, it's probably still more likely that Okpala starts at the 4. Because I feel like he just wants to see and try to get something out of Okpala. And kind of moving on to him, it's interesting because you have to admit that he's one of the better defenders on this team. But other than that, he doesn't have a lot to offer. You could tell that when he was fouling on defense, which is kind of a big no-no with Mike Brown, as it should be with anybody. And he wasn't doing the little things. And of course it's not like he was hitting the 3 miraculously. It's very clear that he becomes a net negative. Like I said, as soon as you put Murray in there, Murray didn't even have to do much. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to play along, plug right in, not make any mistakes, and hold the line, essentially. Okpala can hurt your team really fast. He's got upside. Mike Brown's probably not completely crazy saying that he's got potential to be a defensive player of the year candidate, but you got to remember that he also said in the same sentence that he's got to figure out a way to get on the floor. It just doesn't seem like that's going to necessarily happen. He had an opportunity, and it just doesn't seem like he's going to capitalize on that. And I do think you're probably going to look at a situation with Okpala this season where you're looking at Bazemore. And just to talk about Bazemore for a second, Bazemore he was in the last unit of the 4 units on the first preseason game. And then he didn't really come in until late in the second one, and he closed out the game. And that's not like a great sign, but of course he's a veteran. He played pretty well against Portland. He doesn't really hurt you. I think you're probably going to look at a situation where night to night it'll be between him and Okpala going inactive. And it kind of seems like Bazemore should be that guy. But Bazemore lost his spot last year with the Lakers. So, I mean, anything can happen. But, I mean, that's probably the reality with Okpala. But it seems like Mike Brown really believes in Okpala and at least wants to hang on to him for a bit. So, I mean, I would expect him to maybe make the roster. That's not crazy, but it's just like this whole starter thing is just... It was a nice idea, and if it worked out, it'd be amazing. I mean, like, sometimes you think about it, like, oh man, like, because if he can check the best player on the other team, like, that does so much for you. Because this team, they run with pace, They move a lot. Everybody's active and competitive on both ends of the floor. They use a lot of energy. It's kind of important if you can kind of just put the bulk of a load of guarding a LeBron or something like that, on Okpala. Put him on Kawhi Leonard, or you put him on Booker, maybe in Phoenix or something like that. I mean, it seems like he'll guard the 1 through the 5, honestly. Maybe not the 5, but definitely the 1 through the 4. And like that would be great. But it's just like, I don't know. I remember the first 3-pointer he took against the Lakers, he clunked it off the side of the backboard, and I was just like, that's not a good sign. No. But I mean, I like Okpala. I really think. I mean, we've been saying it. Out of him, Moneke, and Merrill, he has the best upside. He's definitely the guy you probably want to keep if you had to keep one of them. But it's just like it's back to that. He started for a little bit. That was a nice idea. It's back to reality here.
Yeah, I think Okpala will make the 15-man. We did see on Sunday night that Moneke, Merrill, and Quinn Cook didn't play, and the Kings need to cut 3 people. There's the 3 not playing, and they're I think they're suspected as the 3 that were gonna get cut anyway, so it's not too surprising. I mean, we've been talking about this narrative of who's going to make it between Moneke, Merrill, and Okpala. I always thought it was Okpala just because of that defensive upside, and at least he has like a clear cut role where Merrill adds shooting, which is a lot more clear than what Moneke adds as well. But I don't know, Okpala just seemed like, man, if this guy can just hit his shot, like dang, like he can, he could probably be a guy trying to get starting 4 spots in the league. But if all he can do is play good defense and especially with Sabonis out on the floor, you need at least one of your big men to be able to shoot the long ball at a high clip, and that's not going to be Sabonis, and that's going to leave it on Okpala, and he just hasn't proven that, at least in preseason so far. But I think he'll make the team, and probably be that in that inactive spot most nights, maybe come in here and there, make the 13 active spots. But yeah, it's that shooting really. It's just kind of brings him back.
Yeah. And, you had mentioned Chimezie Metu. And Chimezie Metu, like, we were talking about Okpala here, and we're saying at least Okpala can play defense. Maybe if he's not fouling, he can play defense. He's really got something there. Aside from the Mezzi Mamba moments, man, I don't know what Chimezie Metu's doing. And quite frankly, out of the guys that played the other night, he played the worst. Okpala and Lyles started pretty horribly, but Metu wasn't great. Metu came into the game and he fouled 3 times in a little under 4 minutes. And that you do that in a game in the regular season, when you're essentially in a roster position like Metu, where you're talking about if he's on the roster, you're dangling between being inactive and active. You're really not doing yourself any favors doing stuff like that. And again, it's not like he's going in there and playing terrific defense. I'm not going to say he's a terrible defender, but one of the things people say about him and that adds value to him is that he's a 4 and a 5. He's got a big enough body to play the 5. He's guarding Nurkic a couple of times last night. One of his fouls last night was on Nurkic. He couldn't handle it. I don't know that there's as much defensive versatility as maybe it's played up sometimes about him. Maybe I'm making that up. Maybe I thought that just myself. But, it's just like you watch him and you're like wondering. And he went 0 for 4 from 3. And I feel like maybe like 2 or 3 of them, it's like, yeah, those are the ones you needed to take. But there was one, I think it ended up being late in the shot clock. But before he'd gotten the ball, he'd had the ball. And I think he'd kind of been holding it. And just it's like that's so antithetical to Mike Brown's move it defense. You could hear Mike Brown all last night on the sideline. It was amazing. It was great. You could hear everything he's saying. You're like, oh man, this guy is a great. He's throwing out directions, fantastic, and a lot of coaches do. You just don't get to hear it, but it's just like I didn't hear Chauncey Billups doing that as much, or at least as loud. Mike Brown was engaged and everything like that, and man, Metu just he did. I don't know if he was yelling at him when he should have been moving it there, but it's just like you're getting these constant reminders all night, and it's just like there was a couple moments. It wasn't just him. I know like Keon Ellis held it a little bit, and a couple other guys in the final unit. It wasn't like the most free flowing thing, but they were working some stuff out. But Metu, that kind of almost sums him up. He's kind of got some bounce to him, but he's kind of like not explosive or anything. It just seems like I don't know. Like Tony, I know what you're going to say here because I'm going to ask you a question. I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What do you think Chimezie Metu adds to this team? And I don't want to be mean or anything like that. I like Chimezie Metu. I root for him. He had a Messi moment all throughout the end of last year. He was great in the final 12 games or whatever. He was awesome. But it's like, I'm not seeing that now, and you're not going to just wait around for that. But what does Metu do?
What does he do better than most people on the team? I guess be a spark of energy off the bench. Like I've said in the past, he was the one to throw down dunks and get the team and the fans into it. But other than that, I didn't really care for Metu personally. He's only made the team in the past years by default, and now he's actually on on this Kings team that actually has some real talent trying to grab some roster spots. And I think it's really starting to show what Metu is. I'm amazed this dude got some starts last year, but I guess that just showed how weak we've been at that 4 position for the last couple of years.
Looking for something.
Yeah, but you're saying that he's a 5 or a 4. I don't think Metu should ever be playing the 5. I think at points he's an undersized 4. I think he gets away with it because he's a bigger guy and he's athletic, so he can. He has that kind of mismatch body type for a 4. But he's supposed to be a 3-point shooter. Chimezie Metu, in theory, is a stretch 4. I'm not saying that's what he is, but that's how the Kings have used him in years past. What did he shoot from 3 last year? 30%? Maybe not even that high. Was it 30? Did he even get to 30?
I think it was 30.1. But it was under 30 for most of the year. He closed it out very well.
He did close it out very well. But that dude he shoots like he's a shooter. If he shot like Trey Lyles and maybe knocked down one, or I don't know, he just every open 3 it feels like he takes, and you shoot 30% all year and then you're only making 3 out of 10. It's just a bad clip. He's not a good defender. I don't think he's terrible, but he's not wow, that's not, he's not on this team because of his defense. He's on this team because he has potential to be a stretch 4. And I think, he's overstayed his welcome. Personally, I don't understand it. I'd rather have Okpala on this team, because at least, like I was saying, at least Okpala adds in defense, and you're going to get that from him. I would rather even have Maneke. At least Maneke's okay, I don't know what this guy's going to. Yeah, here you go.
You know who I would rather have? I would rather have Sam Merrill. Sam Merrill. The only reason Sam Merrill has no chance of making this team is because he's in a very redundant position. You have Herter, Monk, Davis. You even got, Bazemore, and you got other backup guards and Mitchell and Dellavedova, presumably. You just it doesn't make sense to carry Merrill. But the thing that I like about Merrill, the thing that I think is great about Merrill, particularly for this team, and I'm not just going to say his 3-point shooting, is that he's almost kind of like a cut rate version of Kevin Herter. You can play him in the pick and roll. He's a two guard that can handle the ball. He's a great shooter. That adds into it. He does a lot of things that, kind of, he's like a cheap rate carbon copy version of Kevin Huerter. And I think kind of having backups that play similar style. I mean, I think that's what I like with the idea of Lyles being Murray's backup. Lyles is a guy that, I mean, like physically they're a little different, but Lyles they're both guys that aren't going to try to do too much. They're going to help you when they can help you. They're going to find ways to help you. They have a similar like play style. And I feel like you could get the same thing out of Merrill. And Merrill is, he's a great 3-point shooter. He's very, very good. And again, it's about what are you bringing? And I think you were going to say it about Moneke. Moneke, you talk about, because I was surprised you actually said that Metu brought anything, because I thought you were going to say nothing. But you gave him some credit for, like, the ability to come off the bench, maybe get an alley-oop and fire up the crowd. That's important. Moneke would be better at that. I mean, Moneke kind of was a little choppy with the ball in the one game in Los Angeles. It wasn't like he was exploding on anybody, but he definitely, like, that would be how he makes his money in this league, primarily. And there's a level of mystery, at least to him, and it's like there comes a certain point where it's just like, this is Metu's third season in Sacramento. It's just like, don't you kind of know what you got? I mean, how much time to evaluate this guy do you need?
No, exactly. It's like he was given his chance. He made a game winner one time, but it's like, he was like exactly what you're about to say. And I cut you off, and I'm going to say it worse. But he was, yeah, he's been here 2 years. You know what you're going to get from the dude. It's nothing special. And like you were saying, that mystery of Moneke, I'd rather have a guy, bring in that mystery. Maybe, give opposing coaches like a different, like, like, oh, like what do we do with this guy? Unless, Metu, just leave him alone in the corner. He's going to shoot that three if it's given to him. So
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is I was just talking about that Metu's kind of a stagnant player. What did Moneke say on media day? He said he feels like he's the best cutter in the world. He's a guy that's built to play in Mike Brown's offense. If he's going to succeed anywhere, it's in Mike Brown's offense. I actually don't know if Chimezie Metu's best role is in this offense. I mean, he might be better off going to a place like being in and up in a place like Utah where he can get some play time or something. But like, a team that's totally rebuilding or something where maybe he could see the floor. It's just like, because like I said, I like Metu because sometimes, I mean, like, I think he shouldn't be on this team. I don't like him that much, but I think I get excited when he gets hot and he just starts, throwing up shots, and he's just like, oh man, Messi Mamba, dude, like, here it is. But it's like what we were saying. It's just like, you got to get to reality at some point, and he's been here long enough, and that's just it's kind of tough. But that's just kind of the reality of that situation. But not to continue digging on them, but just we were talking about guys that the guys that didn't play against Portland that might get cut, and another one of those kind of training camp battles was the starting point guard position, or the third point guard position. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about the starting point guard position, but that third point guard position on the roster was very much a two-man battle between Matthew Dellavedova and Quinn Cook. And I think both of us kind of felt like Dellavedova had the edge, but there was reason to believe. I know James Ham kind of posited at the beginning, although I know James Ham's opinion of Dellavedova has really changed since getting to know him and seeing him on the practice floor. But, there were reasons to believe that maybe Quinn Cook, with his three-point shooting and better injury history, could be the guy. But Dellavedova seems like he'll be that guy by all, appearances. And he's just good for that. We were talking about it. I mean, like, he's got a little bit better size than Cook, although not exceptional. But really what you like about him is the way he plays, the way he communicates, the leadership. You see him out there playing with like Keita, Ellis. I mean, he's out there with like Bazemore last night, but it's just like, I don't know. You just kind of feel like he's babysitting. And it's not like, that's no disrespect to Keita and Ellis, but they're not NBA players. Ellis is, I think, going to be an NBA player probably in a year or two. Keita, he's coming along. We'll see. He definitely has a lot of confidence, Neemias Queta. I mean, he's a confident dude. But they could be NBA players soon, but they're not NBA players now. So it's just like you have Dellavedova out there, and I don't know. I just feel like he's perfect for that role, and in a locker room presence too. I think that could be a huge thing. So, I don't know. Quinn Cook played for Stockton last year. Maybe that's a pipeline thing where he'll go play in Stockton again. That could be the thing. As with Merrill and Maneke too, they may very well end up there, unless I think they'd be free to grab. But if that doesn't happen, I would imagine they'd be in Stockton. But Dellavedova is the guy, and like I said, it was kind of what we expected. But I don't know if there's anything that surprised you about Dellavedova or anything like that, or Cook.
I think what I'm going to add to this is that I think Dellavedova is just better fit for a third string point guard role.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, and it's going to sound like I'm dogging on him a little, but it really isn't. So like Quinn Cook, he was in Stockton last year. And if you look at his Stockton stats, they were super good. And so I just see Quinn Cook a little more as a guy hungrier to prove it in this league still, a little more than Dellavedova, where Dellavedova knows like he's like if he got this role, he'd be third string, a locker room guy, kind of like a teacher like that. Where I think Cook, like I think it'd be harder to put Cook at that third string spot. Like you're asking me who my second string point guard is, I'd rather have Cook than Dellavedova personally. But as a third string guy, you want Dellavedova, a guy with championship experience, a guy with leadership qualities, right? Or Cook, he just seems like, to me personally, is that he still wants to prove it that he can make it in this league. And maybe if you throw him out on the floor, he's going to do too much. Or Dellavedova, he's just going to play it smart. He's going to play it cool. And so that's why I kind of always like Dellavedova at the 3 or as the third string point guard over Cook. But nothing against Cook. I just think for that role, it's such a specific role and a role that's not going to see a lot of time on the floor. I just think Dellavedova will provide more quality minutes than Cook. Like I'm saying, I think Cook would be your better second string, but as a third string, I think Dellavedova fits it a little better. I think he would just be more cool and collected.
And I think you're right to kind of add to that point that Dellavedova is just a better fit. If like Fox or Mitchell misses some time, like Dellavedova would slide up to the number 2, but it's not like you'd see him in a heavy dose. There's so many ball handlers on this team. Of course you'd want to have a floor general out there. That seems like an important thing. So Dellavedova would get his time, but it's not like he'd be the primary guy all of a sudden in pick and roll things. He would definitely be still playing that leadership role. And the idea that having, whoever the other point guard is that didn't get hurt, having Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk as guys that can, handle the ball in the 2-man game. Terrence Davis was showing last night that he could do it, and you also have Murray and Barnes even. And like the ball handling thing's not going to be really an issue. So it's like that even makes it, even when Dellavedova slides up to number 2, which I would imagine would happen a few times, not everybody plays 82 games. I think in that way, just the way the roster is constructed, the ability for so many guys to play on ball, like it won't force Dellavedova to do too much. And it probably helps him too that he's got that mentality where he knows his role. And Cook would know his role too, but I think you're 100% right. And that's kind of also like another thing that was kind of interesting going into it was it's just like that really added to it. It's just like, yeah, but like, let's think about this really. Like Cook was you can probably make the argument that Cook is the better overall player, but Dellavedova, his intangibles, his on-floor presence, like I said, the way he's communicating and talking to everybody, I feel like there are a few times in the game against Portland, it's just like whenever he's on the screen and in between plays or as a timeout, going into a timeout, coming out of a timeout, he's talking to some younger guy. That's what you want to see, especially with a coach like Mike Brown who's talking all the time. So, yeah, I think Dellavedova is just a better fit for the role and the team. But, we've been talking a lot about kind of the bottom half of the roster mostly here. we have, we were talking about Murray being the 4, but that's still up in the air, I guess. But there are 4 starters that we know: Darren Fox at the 1, Kevin Huerter at the 2, Barnes at the 3, and Domas at the 5. That obviously looks good on paper, but seeing it over the last 2 preseason games has been really fun to watch, especially watching them. Like, I think Fox and Sabonis, the guys were missing shots in the first game. It was nice to see guys like hitting shots and things kind of working out. But it's just like, man, it just seems like these guys being in the starting 5 along with, whoever else is in there. It just seems like these guys are, these are really good NBA players, and it's kind of crazy that this is the Kings. I don't know. Just the way they complement each other. Like I said, the ability for so many guys to go off ball and on ball. I think, but Darren Fox hit 3 threes last night. He was 3 of 3 from beyond the line. I think one of them was off of like a dribble handoff action where he just kind of did a pull-up 3 with Sabonis. I think another one was a catch and shoot. I can't remember what the third one was. He's showing that he can play on ball and off ball. That's a big emphasis for him and Sabonis. But when you say that him and Sabonis have to play off ball, I feel like it's far more important for Darren Fox to be doing that. Because Sabonis, like we've said, is kind of air traffic control in the high and low post. So, it's more important to kind of have that movement with the other 4 guys. And so if he's hitting threes, that's a huge deal. And the ability to have him play off ball comes from, like I said, Kevin Huerter being able to play. You saw him handle the ball a good amount. You did see him do that a lot in Atlanta. I spent some time, more time watching some of his tape from Atlanta, and it's just like he did so many screen and roll actions with, whether it was John Collins, who could hit threes or drive to the rim, or Clint Capella, who he could set up for an alley-oop. He was great, coming around off ball, but obviously on ball, he's just great I know he used the twist screen action a lot. It'd be interesting to see if we'll see that with the Kings this year. I don't know. I'm sure that, I don't know. I don't know if a player's preference is, I don't even know if that is a player's preference, but you see so many different things. I don't want to get bogged up here. You see so many different things, from the ability to play on ball and off ball, all orchestrated in the center by Sabonis. You got a guy like Barnes in there who can also set screens, roll off, kind of like a John Collins almost was doing in Atlanta with Huerter that I was talking about. There's just so many different actions, so many things for a defense to worry about. These 4 guys, presumably starting to think about the starting 5 with Murray, it's just like that substantiates it even more. This starting unit it's impressive, and seeing it is, like the progression, like I said, from preseason game 1 to preseason game 2. The execution was better, and they're going to just only get better. Not just Fox and Sabonis, but all these guys. And man, that starting lineup is impressive, though.
Yeah, kind of going on Huerter alone, I was really happy when we got Kevin Huerter, because that just added another layer of depth to this team. Just because we had, our shooting guards last year were Buddy and Davis, right? And what happened when Davis went out? Who was playing 2? Why am I blanking? Anyway, I don't know, who was the starting 2 last year? Most of the year. Oh, it was Halliburton, until he got traded. That was 2 point guards.
The forgotten man.
I know already. Man. Oh, because that was
who?
That's a different conversation. But you had Buddy, you had Davis, and Buddy was a liability. Of course, we all know Buddy and Davis. I like Davis, but he's not your starting shooting guard. At least he wasn't last year. He was a good 2. But we signed Malik Monk. I'm like, okay, like Monk and Davis. That's a good. You're pretty good at the 2 there, like better than what we have been in recent years. But you bring in Kevin Huerter, who's a really good role player. It's been on winning teams. That pushes Monk to the bench, which just adds, that just makes that bench unit so much better in itself. Huerter, a guy who can also play the 3, which can relieve Harrison Barnes of some minutes. I just thought that was such a smart move. He's going to fit into this perfectly with his 3-point shooting ability and his team defense. I thought that was the best move of the offseason, really. I mean, you can argue drafting Keegan Murray, but like in signs and trades, I think that was the best move. And then you were talking about Darren Fox hitting threes, and it was nice. He hit 3 for 3 on Sunday from long range, and man, if he can do that all season, uh, that would be so big. If he can shoot like 36 plus, I mean, if he can somehow get up to 38, I mean, I think he's an all star at that point, no doubt. But if he can just prove that he's a 3 point shooter, his game is going to open up so much. It's going to be crazy, and he's been working on it a lot. And I mean, I feel like he works on it every year, but it just seems a little different, especially after what we saw him finish last season with. He was shooting the ball at a high clip after shooting it very poorly in the first half. So hopefully he can transition. It looks like he kind of is already. Oh, man, if Fox can hit that three consistently at a high clip, then this team is going to be really good. And I think Sabonis and Fox will both be all stars. If Fox can do that, especially if he can do some catch and shoots as well, man, that's gonna be a really good starting lineup. And Fox and Sabonis are going to lead that pack. But even if he doesn't, I mean, it's still the best starting lineup we've seen in a very long time, and you can only be happy about that going forward, and look forward to see what they can do during the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of pinpoint on Fox there, he closed out after the Sabonis trade. He closed out with shooting 36% from three in that time, and we were all talking like this is the best Darren Fox hot streak. Like he not only is he's seemingly getting in the paint and getting shots up and in. Like I remember the game against like Chicago or something like that. Just like early on, you're just like I don't know, maybe it wasn't the game against Chicago, but there was so many games there where it's just like down the stretch, you just see him just getting buckets. And you just add that 3 point element. And he was doing it again at a 36% clip. And we were saying this guy's playing the best basketball he's probably ever played. Of course, Sabonis plays a huge part of that. But you see him hitting threes. Also add in the defensive kind of, which, he started playing solid defense. And he seemed more bought into things, and everybody points to the stat that he when the opponent is great, he kind of comes out and plays defense. He just didn't call anybody a sorry motherfucker, but that's the thing with him. I'm referencing Draymond Green if you're not aware, but Darren Fox, we were talking about how great he was, and seems like he's going to be able to pick up where he left off. And if he can do that, if he can shoot 36%, maybe even better, there's no doubt that this guy's going to be approaching 30 points a game. And like, how's that not an all-star? And he's just, I think he's going to be one of the leading scorers in the league. He especially if he's hitting threes, man, he's going to be so good. It's ridiculous. And he, like I said, he seemed more bought into things. You could see it on the defensive end, but overall, when he knew his place, both Halliburton and him balled out after the trade. It's fair to say, and many have pointed out, that both have benefited from kind of having the clarity of being the guy, that maybe that does affect them. And it's not like they had any animosity towards each other. They like each other. They're hanging out, but that kind of locker room dynamic that, where's my place in this franchise matters. And then you clear that up for him. You get him Sabonis. You give him that, not just the best facilitating big that he's ever played with, but the best in the world. And that ups his game. You bring in Mike Brown, who teaches this whole, you got to be active, moving, competitive spirit on defense, all these things. His coaching staff of Luke Lux, who had him, who was in Italy with him, working out. Like, it just, all things are pointing to that. And, man, I don't know. It's just, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's like, there's so many things that are like, wow, I kind of expected some of this, but even so, it's like it's even better than you expected in a lot of ways. And it's early. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. They haven't played a regular season game. They've only played 2 preseason games. But it's just like all signs are pointing to being on the right track, which is all you can ask for right now. And it just makes this all the more likely. And man, we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, like, oh, well, most likely it'll just be Sabonis probably being an all-star. There's a good chance that Sabonis will be an all-star, especially if this team's winning games. And we were kind of like, yeah, it's kind of hard to have 2 all-stars, but it's just like, if Fox is doing this, then he's he's going to be an all-star. And it's just, like I said, things are headed in that direction as it stands here in early to mid-October. That, man, Fox it's crazy to think about what he'll be able to do.
Yeah, it just seems like Fox is really primed for a big year. I mean, we all thought he kind of was last year after he scored 25.2 points a game the season before last season. So 2 years ago, and you're like, okay, like, dang, 25 points a game. He's going to come out and have a huge year. You know, he kind of started off a little slow, and it didn't help having 2 point guards on the floor at once with Halliburton and himself. But like you said, like, Fox, Halliburton got traded and you bring in Sabonis, but that just really solidified Fox as that franchise cornerstone. And he just ran with it. And full season with Sabonis ahead, and just playing off of what he was doing at the end of last season, he's just poised for a big year. And if he's poised for a big year and Sabonis can keep doing all-star worthy things, then what does that say about the Kings and where they can do this season? I expect big things all around, and I'm not saying like a 6th seed or a 5th seed, but even like pushing for an 8th seed or even the 9th seed. It sounds like such a lame goal, but it's baby steps, and from where this franchise has been for the last 16 years, that's a big step in itself. And I think they can really do that and surprise a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'd mention this, but whether or not Murray is in the second unit, and part of any chance at success this season is not just going to come from the starting lineup. They're going to be great. They're going to be very good. Herder said there's no reason that they shouldn't be one of the top offenses in the league. Like we're talking about, Fox should be one of the top scorers in the league. But the second unit matters a lot too. They've got to be able to go in there and do second unit stuff. And as we're saying, whether Murray's in there or not, Davion Mitchell, year 2, Malik Monk, great pickup. Trey Lyles, dependable starter. You probably also, I guess, would throw Terrence Davis in there if we're assuming Murray is in fact starting. And Rashawn Holmes, one of the better centers in the league. Definitely the best reserve center in the league. That is a hell of a second unit. And it'll be interesting to see how things work out, because I think there's some chemistry that needs to be worked out there. I think having, Barnes, Sabonis, and Fox having all played together last season, and that makes the starting unit far, they know what they're doing. Sabonis is out there. He makes everybody's job easier. The other 2 know him. The 3 of them have played together. You're adding in a guy like Herder who plugs right in. You're adding a guy like Murray, presumably, who plugs right in as well. It's easy to see how that's kind of going to hit the ground running. The second unit might take a little bit more time, but it's got all the makings to be very, very good. And I was just talking about like Trey Lyles was playing better with the starters. That might have something to do with the fact that he also was playing in that starting lineup. He would have been the 4th guy. If he's a starter, that's 4 guys that played together last season. Maybe he just needs a little more time to kind of get comfortable with the second unit. You're seeing steps from Davion Mitchell. In the first preseason game, he kind of was making silly mistakes. He shorted up in the second half. Mike Brown said that the defensive shift in the second half started with him. That might just be pumping up his player, pumping up his point guard for the second half. But, I don't think he's completely making that up. Monk is getting more comfortable. We're going to get out of Monk. I mean, he's going to be the bulk of the scoring off the bench. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's going to be really interesting to watch. Lyles, solid, but just needs to get comfortable. Holmes, great roll man. Set screens, set up for alley-oops, talk about energy off the bench. I mean, that could be him. This second unit, if they can just kind of get comfortable, and it'll be interesting to see in the Portland or in the game in Phoenix, if they can make that kind of next jump. It'll be interesting to see what these guys can do and if we can see these 5 guys on the floor together against Phoenix. But I mean, you give it a couple of games into the year and they start figuring things out. I mean, this could be such a useful, component of the team. The second unit, the 5 guys in the second unit. I mean, it's impressive.
And do you know someone who I'm really excited to see this year, who's basically getting zero attention? It's Harrison Barnes, and
Yeah.
that's because I said it when we got Sabonis last year, was that Barnes was being utilized as the number 2 scoring option, which should never be the case. And now with Murray stepping up, as you see in preseason and what he did in summer league, it's like you were saying, like, yeah, I think Murray could be the 3rd option. Like, yeah, maybe. Like, I think that's pushing it. But shoot, after seeing what he's doing, like, I totally understand where you're coming from. You throw Barnes at the 4 option on scoring. I mean, maybe even the 5th behind Herter or Monk even.
Yeah.
Just a reduced role from what he's had to do since he's been on the Kings. And yeah, he's not going to score 17 points like he did last year. Because he's not the second guy to score the ball. But I just think he's gonna have just a very nice year. He shoots the 3 ball at a high clip. I think he's gonna benefit from all of this a lot. He's not gonna have those burnouts that he usually does mid-season, and I just really like Barnes. I was really hard on Barnes at the beginning of his Kings tenure, but I really fell in love with him last year, and he's perfect for this culture. He fits in with this team really well. I mean, I feel like he fits in with any team really well. He's just good 3-point shooter, good defender. I think he's just gonna have a really good yet probably quiet season. But I'm excited to see what he can do with a reduced role and a role that he is meant to play.
Yeah. What did he do in Golden State? He wasn't even close to being the primary option. And when the ball came to him in the playoffs, he hit his threes. I think you're going to see a return to that. Harrison Barnes, you got to make the playoffs first. But everybody points to it. Look at his shot chart. And we wrote about this at the beginning of training camp. One of the questions about Harrison Barnes is he still the 3rd option? Well, probably not. When you have Murray and Herter, and that's probably a good thing. His shot chart when he was in Dallas was all over the place. And then he started to play better in Sacramento. As James Ham at one point noted, when he started shooting simply either within 10 feet or from beyond the arc, limiting any other shots. It was a cleaner shot chart and a more efficient shot chart. He's able to be such a heavy impact and efficient player by not having to do too much. It just seems like throughout his career, that's kind of the thing with him. He's very good. He's very talented. You'd like him maybe to be like, look at the beginning of last year, or the first game of the year. Like, how many points did he score against Portland last season on opening night? And it was like, oh my God, is Harrison Barnes going to be an MVP candidate? Obviously, no. But it's just like he's so much better suited as a 4th or 5th option, like you're talking about. And he's a guy that's going to do what he needs to do. He's going to hit his shots. He's going to play in the pick and roll game, stand in a corner. He'll do anything. He'll cut. He's a great cutter. I think another thing that gets kind of overlooked. Mike Brown actually said it at the end of the Portland game, so it didn't get overlooked at all. But Harrison Barnes had 3 offensive rebounds last night against Portland. He's good. He wants to get active on the glass. You take the scoring load off him, like you're saying, and he's going to be able to kind of spread out and do other things, be more active on the glass, be a better defender. We always talk about how he's not a great defender. I mean, he's like a solid team defender. He's probably going to thrive in this Mike Brown offense, in this Mike Brown kind of style defense. But it's like, well, you're taking that scoring load off him. Maybe he'll be a little bit better one-on-one. You don't want him to be on an island against anybody, but maybe he's a little bit more effective with less of a scoring role. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think spot on. There's so many things to talk about. It does kind of get overlooked. And he kind of is, when you think about it, of the starting 5, Fox and Sabonis. Everybody wants to talk about them. Herder, you're talking about, he's like the great pickup. Murray, the rookie that everybody's got their eyes on, that's surprising, not really surprising everybody, but is playing great. Barnes kind of gets forgotten, and I think that's a great point because he's going to have a big year in a way that's not going to be like blowing off the stat sheet. He's just going to be. Granted, he doesn't get traded, which you can't rule that out. Last year of his deal, but I mean, like, you think about it, it's like, I don't want to be too optimistic and like sappy, because it's a business, but it's like, maybe he has a great year not playing a huge role, and he can kind of not take up so much money and be with the team going forward or something like that. Doesn't that kind of serve a similar purpose if he can just kind of, because I'm sure that if he's winning, playing a starting role here, he'd be more than happy to stay. I don't want to overspeak, but finally getting some stability, seeing things being done the right way. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself on that, but it's just like he can really have a big year. He could really make things interesting going forward with the whole idea that he could very well be traded, or he might not be here next year, or maybe he will be. I don't know. It's a great point about Harrison Barnes.
Just to add what you're saying about not thinking ahead, I mean, to think ahead a little, the small forward free agent class next offseason is very, very limited. So holding on to Harrison is probably not a bad idea unless you can get one in a trade. I'm just saying.
That's a good point. And I mean, Barnes is a good one, and I know he's going to be, he's 30 this year, and so he'll be 31 next year. This guy takes care of his body, arguably, he's almost best in class in terms of that. And he's modified his game, and he's almost gotten better with each year. And of course, you're getting to a point in your career where you're going to start to plateau and decline, maybe even in production. But if anybody's going to kind of extend their prime a little bit, it'd be Harrison Barnes, right? At least I would wager.
Yeah, 100%. He's the one to do it. The way he takes care of himself, and especially taking a reduced role.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just you got it. Hell yeah. So I think that's a great point about Harrison Barnes. It definitely can't be overlooked. Man, very, very impressive. But just a few guys that maybe we could touch upon, since we've almost touched upon everybody on the roster. Talk about the depth of this team. And when you have a situation essentially where you can look at, maybe Terrence Davis is kind of a second unit guy. He's going to be utilized. But, think about Terrence Davis. You think about Alex Len, and you think about maybe a guy like Kent Bazemore, and even Akpala, because I was talking about, they might be between them suiting up or not, You think about these guys, and it's like, particularly Davis, Len, and Bazemore, and it's like depth pieces, and add Delly in there too. That's great. I mean, like, what the heck? Like, those guys are all steady forces that, are going to be able to, like Davis, in Davis's case, he's going to go out there and be effective. In Bazemore's case, he's going to go out there and not hurt you. And even when he's not playing, he's going to help you. Len, he goes in there. I mean, he's also great in the pick and roll game. He's a big guy. He adds some rim protection. You see him block Damian Lillard on Sunday? That was great. I think Apollo was startled when he found out that Len was on his back. He was backing up as Lillard came to the rim, and Len came up from backside to help and swatted that sucker away. And then he came up on the other end and had a dunk. I mean, like, we talk about all the time. Alex Len is just like Delly in terms of being a third point guard. Len is just the ideal guy to be, at the five. I mean, it's as the third five. And, the depth of this team is I don't know. Again, it's like one of those things where it's just like, you just haven't seen this. And so it's interesting,
Yeah, the depth. I mean, like you're saying, just looking at those third string people like in Davis and Len and even Dellavedova, it's just it's just so much deeper than we've had in a long time, and like legitimately, it's not like, oh, we got Hassan Whiteside at the, when he's kind of like a useless player in the league. It's like these are real NBA talent on your bench. Like Monk, Holmes, and Mitchell is a pretty good bench alone right there. I mean, those are two guys that could be starting in this league. Um, no, the depth is it's really encouraging, and it's going to keep people on their toes. I mean, I think Lynn can be a second string center on a lot of teams. And if Holmes starts, I'm not saying Holmes would, but just like, if he does, then he knows Lynn's right behind him waiting to get those minutes. And especially at that two spot, like Davis, he's probably the third stringer, like, in quotes. Like, I feel like he's going to get more minutes than Lynn will, but like if Monk or Herter start slacking, then Davis is right there, ready to scoop up those minutes. So, like we've been talking about this, like training camp is a friendly competition. That's gonna roll over into the regular season and hopefully make everyone play better. That competitiveness to stay on the floor.
Yeah, I think one note about Terrence Davis is, I think Terrence Davis knows that he's got he's figuring it out. He's known it from the start. He was the one that started saying healthy competition from the beginning of camp, and he saw it firsthand again on Sunday. He, I think, gave up 3 easy baskets. One in particular where he just completely lost his man, and timeout and got pulled. And he was playing well. Like I said, I mean, he looked like a good guy with the ball in his hands. He was hitting his threes. He looked good, but he made those mistakes that were really big no-nos in the eyes of Mike Brown. And he noted it after the game that like accountability is a big deal. And so just that note and that kind of spreads throughout the team. I'm sure that's the whole mentality. That's the understanding. That's the reality. And I mean, I don't know. I think that's going to bring out the best in Davis. And yeah, you're going to see a lot of 3 guard lineups, and he's going to be playing a lot. But it's important for him in particular to make sure that he's playing defense, because especially if he's technically the third shooting guard, if you have a situation where because Malik Monk's not a good defender. I think Malik Monk doesn't even really have the physical attributes to be a plus defender every night. I think he can plug in and kind of stick with his man decently and do all these things to kind of be a decent team defender, but he's not going to be a great defender. Terrence Davis actually has the potential to be a good defender. He has the 6'9" wingspan. I feel like he has everything there to be a decent on-ball defender. One of the things, obviously, as I kind of noted there, is the problem is he kind of gets a little foggy off ball. He needs to lock in there, because if Monk is having a bad shooting night, and you're not getting that production in the second unit from him, one of the things that's really going to push the hand to get Davis out on the floor is not only if Davis can come in and be a replacement shooter for him, but also if he can come in and play better defense. Because then all of a sudden you're looking at situations where, well, maybe Monk's not doing terribly, but maybe you need that extra defensive punch. Davis really needs to lock in on the defensive side of the ball. I've been talking it up all offseason. I was pulling my hair out watching him play defense early on on Sunday night. Because I feel like an idiot, but I'm like, Terrence Davis might be the best defender out of the 3 shooting guards. And I'm like, shit. He doesn't look like it. Not like Monk does, but nobody said Monk was going to be it. But it's just like, man, I do, but it's clear that he understands that. It's clear he's going to work on that. I expect him to be better, and I expect him to be forcing his coach's hands. I expect that if this team is going to do anything that they want to do in the win column, it's going to have to be tough distributing the minutes. It's going to have to be a tough decision.
Yeah, I mean it will, but seeing what Mike Brown's done so far with this team, I think he's gonna have it under control. He's a smart guy. I don't know, but you make a good point. But I guess it's up to him at this point. See what he does. But it is nice to see him put an emphasis on defense, and he won't let people get away with making bad plays.
Yeah, And you saw that with Okpala getting pulled early too.
Yeah, exactly.
But, like I said, because I feel like we kind of covered everything there, but it just seems like it's early, but it's like at this point, everything that you'd want to be happening, like it's kind of happening. You're on the right track to be doing something good this year. So far, satisfactory grades for the most part. So far.
Yeah, the Kings are giving us a lot to look forward to. With, like I said, the season in a little over a week, Wednesday the 19th. We have another game tomorrow against the Suns at 7. I'm definitely going to tune into that and see see if the Kings can keep up their 30-point routings against these other preseason teams. But it's been fun to watch so far, and I just want to watch more.
Yeah, I can hardly wait for the regular season. It's actually good to watch what is going to presumably be competitive basketball from start to finish.
Yeah, it's going to be probably the most exciting season in a long time. So, I mean, just buckle in and I guess enjoy the ride from here on out. It's gonna be a long season, but like I said, the Kings are giving us a lot to look forward to, and it's hard not to smile after watching these preseason games and just hearing everything going around training camp. It's awesome to see and hear. But do you have anything else to add?
I think that's it. I think that covers it.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone that tuned in, and until next time, have a good one.